channel. In tonight's video we are back with the ever popular conspiracy theories. I regularly get comments asking for another installment of these, and we're finally back with one. They've kind of slowed a little bit here on the channel just because I've done all the big ones for the most part, so really I've been scratching my brain as to ones we can cover, but I've got a reasonably sized list of conspiracy theories to work through and do videos on, so they should become a bit more regular on the channel, like the good old days, basically. But tonight, we're going to be talking about the end of the world, when it's happening, or more accurately, when people thought it was going to happen. But funnily enough, it didn't. I believe we've got 5 or 6 different instances of various theories of why the Earth was going to end across history, and we're going to whisper through them together. So hopefully you enjoy it. If you do, leave a like, and let's get into conspiracy theory number 1. So we're going to begin with the biggie, the Mayan apocalypse, otherwise known to most people as 2012. Obviously a very popular one, and they made a movie about it. I actually remember this happening. Well, the day the Earth was meant to end, I was sat in school in business studies, and it got to the time, and everyone was almost counting down like New Year's Eve, and then funnily enough, the Earth didn't end, and I had to continue business studies. So let's dive into it. I think this article was written before the world didn't end, basically, so at the time. So did the ancient Mayans really predict that the world would end in 2012, as millions of people believe? So the Mayan civilization dates back to 2000 BC and extended through what is now southern Mexico, Guatemala, Belize, El Salvador, and parts of Honduras. During the civilization's peak from AD 300 to 900, the Mayans not only built towering temples and pyramids, but also created elaborate astronomical maps and calendars and sophisticated mathematical systems. The civilization went into decline after 900, and its once teeming cities were soon abandoned. Historians dispute why this happened. Some say the Mayans were decimated by a 200-year drought, while others say they brought on their own downfall through over-farming. About 10 million descendants of the Mayans still live in Central America. So did the Mayans really predict the end of the world? Well, that belief is very much in dispute. The Mayan long count calendar progresses using a cycle of approximately 394 years, known as Bakdun. The calendar ends after the 13th Bakdun, which closes on the 21st of December of 2012. A stone tablet recovered in Mexico in the 1960s made an oblique reference to a god of war descending from the sky at the end of the 13th Bakdun. That artifact has fed widespread theories that the world will end that day, and archaeologists last November identified an ancient brick fragment inscribed with what could be another reference to the same portentous date. But anthropologists unanimously agree that the Mayans saw time as cyclical, not linear. December 21st, 2012 simply represents the end of one cycle and the start of a new one. There is no concept of apocalypse in the Mayan culture, said Jesus Gomez, head of the Guatemalan Confederation of Mayan Priests. So why does this belief persist, or did it persist back then? Well, conspiracy theorists keep it alive. Those pesky conspiracy theorists. In many cases for profit. Interest in the Mayan calendar dates back to the 1960s, when various New Age authors predicted that December 21st, 2012 would usher in a new era of cosmic peace and understanding. But other fringe historians chose to see this date as Armageddon, and soon began to publish books linking the 13th Pacton with everything from Nostradamus to the lost city of Atlantis. In their book The Mayan Prophecies, published in 1996, Maurice Cotterill and Adrian Gilbert claimed to have found evidence that the Mayans had predicted that solar activity would reverse the Earth's magnetic field in December 2012, destroying civilization and wiping out the human race. This idea spawned hundreds of books and tens of thousands of websites, all devoted to enhancing the idea that the world would end in 2012. With the disaster movie 2012, even Hollywood got in on the fad. As the date itself approaches, doomsayers will renew their efforts. NASA says it is contacted by about 10 people every day, asking about the end of the world, with some asking if they should kill themselves. Gosh, it's a little bit dramatic, isn't it? Well, this next section is, are others profiting from doomsday fears? Opportunistic internet retailers are selling 2012 survival kits, insurance policies. But what good is an insurance policy if the whole world is destroyed? And reserved seating in doomsday-proof bunkers. Californian Robert Vigino is peddling spaces in his private network of impervious underground survival shelters for $10,000 a head. What if the prophecies are true, he says on his website, which helpfully includes a countdown clock to the big day. Which side of the door do you want to be on? Retailers have also seen a mini boom in books, DVDs and magazines explaining or debunking the myth. It's an amazing cottage industry, said Benjamin Radford, managing editor of Skeptical Inquirer. There are hundreds of titles out there, and we expect dozens more. But what did people actually believe would cause the end? How would it come? Those who believe the world will end in December have come up with various scenarios for global catastrophe, massive earthquakes and tsunamis, the eruption of a supervolcano, and the sudden reversal of the Earth's poles. One of the more creative theories is that a rogue planet named Nibiru, or Planet X, is hidden behind the Sun and will emerge and collide with Earth later this year. Another theory points to a planet named Eris. NASA has dismissed Nibiru as an internet hoax and explained that while a dwarf planet named Eris does exist at the edge of the solar system, its distant orbit precludes any collision with Earth. Theories that a solar storm might affect Earth aren't as far-fetched. A severe solar storm occurred just last week in 2012, but NASA says solar flares do not pose an existential threat. There is no credible evidence for any of the assertions made in support of unusual events taking place in December 2012, NASA says. And well, it turns out, thank goodness, NASA were right. I was getting very worried for a second. I remember Year 10 me, or whatever As of 2024, Halley's comet will pass Earth July 28, 2061. While it is seen today as a novelty that reminds us of the beauty of the universe, in 1910 the comet caused sensationalized news and widespread panic. While the return of Halley's comet incited a new sense of panic in 1910, it was not the first time it had been observed from the Earth. Halley's comet is named after the English astronomer Edmund Halley, who was able to predict the return of the comet in 1785. It later came back in 1835, with a future return date in 1910. Although there is no evidence in history of the comet being seen earlier, Halley was the first one to realise that it was the same comet that kept returning and was able to calculate its orbit. The first documented sighting of Halley's comet is disputed to be as far back as 5th century BCE by the Greeks, or in the 3rd century by Chinese astronomers. Potential records of the comet in historical texts and art continue to offer speculation, including whether a painting by Italian Giotto depicted the comet in the sky. One well-documented occurrence of Halley's comet was in 1066 and involved William the Conqueror. William the Conqueror was King of England, notably the first Norman king after a successful invasion that was recorded in the Bayeux Tapestry, an embroidered cloth almost 230 by 2. He is said to have thought that the comet signalled his coming 1066 victory, and it was notable enough for it to be embroidered into the Bayeux Tapestry. So, setting the stage in 1910, as the date approached, many began to wonder what the comet's impact would be when it passed by. Some newspapers offered sensational speculation which sent people into a panic. What would happen if the comet collided with Earth? Scientists were quick to assure people that this would not occur. However, they had their own hypotheses. According to the Library of Congress, the initial news circulated about the comet in September 1909. In February 1910, French astronomer and writer Nicolas Camille Flammarion, who was sometimes influenced not just by science but science fiction, was widely reported as stating to newspapers in multiple countries, including the United States, that there would be devastating consequences. He said the tail of the comet would pass through the Earth's atmosphere, and toxic gases could snuff out all life on Earth. Later he reported that it would be improbable and that the tail of a comet is too insignificant to do any damage, and that it was an interesting thought experiment on what could happen if there were poisonous gases in the atmosphere. As many newspapers chose to only print the sensational part rather than his correction, it led to many believing that the scientist was predicting the end of the world. Sometime between April-May 1910, when Halley's comet would complete its orbit near Earth and be visible. So that brings us into preventative measures. The panic that deadly gases could somehow enter Earth's atmosphere started over the knowledge that the tail of Halley's comet contained cyanogen, a very deadly gas. As with any tragedy or impending disaster, real or assumed, there will be people waiting to take advantage of the ensuing panic. Con men began selling pills and elixirs that claimed to be able to deal with the negative effects of the comet. This included 2 men from Texas who marketed sugar pills as a cure-all, who were arrested for a short period before being released. One advertised anti-comet medication said it was an elixir for escaping the wrath of the heavens. looks at best, these tonics and pills were placebos and simple sugar pills, and water with some things mixed in. At worst, there was a danger in not knowing their chemical makeup. The response to the potentially deadly fumes of the comet had a similar outcome to other national disasters or pandemics. People were trying to make their homes safer by stuffing cracks, including keyholes, so vapours would not get in. Different churches also became busier, as more people came into services to receive forgiveness and get penance before the end of days. One of the best ideas came in the form of an anti-comet umbrella that would somehow keep the users safe from the comet and the residue it would give off as it passed by Earth. Solid. Not all the products that were sold related to the comet were negative or intended to save people from sickness or death. Some were simply using the vent for some creative advertising, in the same way that many different limited edition items, branding, drinks, and food were named or related to the 2024 eclipse. Bird's custard, a powder that can cook into a curdle-free sauce, and Pears' soap both use the comet as advertisement for their products. The Bird's custard advertisement features the illustration of a comet streaking towards Earth saying, "Bird's custard attracts the world." Meanwhile, Pears' soap is slightly more detailed. Their ad states, Halley's comet appears but once in 75 years. Pears' soap is visible day and night, every day of the year, all over the world. The advertisement ran in Redbook magazine in their April 1910 issue. So, Halley's comet today. Halley's comet went by in 1910 without any Earth-ending disasters. Instead, it became recognised as an awe-inspiring event. The orbit around the Sun makes it a rare occurrence within a lifetime, and it continues to be the only short-term comet that can be seen without the aid of a telescope from Earth. In 1986, technology had advanced enough to allow a more in-depth picture of it from space. Mission and research have been planned for when the comet's orbit brings it close to Earth. NASA had planned that the Space Shuttle Challenger's mission would study the comet, although it did not take place due to the tragic explosion on January 28, 1986. It remains to be seen what sort of tests or imaging will be planned in the future when Halley's comet graces our presence once again. Hopefully this time we will avoid the drama and sensationalist news in favour of a more positive outlook. Next up, we're going to focus on an individual named Joanna Southcot. Now, Joanna Southcot was a British self-described religious prophetess from Devon. A Southcotian movement continued in various forms after her death. Its eighth prophet, Mabel Baltrop, died in 1934. So, Joanna Southcot was born in the hamlet of Daleford, Devonshire, baptised at Ottery St Mary, and grew up in the village of Giddisham. Her father ran a small farm. She did dairy work as a girl, and after the death of her mother, Hannah, she went into service, first as a shop girl in Honiton, then for a considerable time as a domestic servant in Exeter. She was eventually dismissed because a footman whose attentions she rejected claimed that she was growing mad. Originally in the Church of England, she joined the Wesleyans in Exeter in about 1792. She became persuaded that she had supernatural gifts and wrote and dictated prophecies in rhyme. She then announced herself as the Woman of of the apocalypse, as described in the Book of Revelation. Southcot came to London at the request of William Sharp, an engraver, and began selling paper seals of the Lord at prices varying from 12 shillings to a guinea. The seals were supposed to ensure a holder's place among the 144,000 people ostensibly elected to eternal life. At the age of 64, Southcot claimed she was pregnant with the new Messiah, the Shiloh of Genesis. 19th of October 1814 was the planned delivery date, but Shiloh failed to appear, and it was given out that she was in a trance. Southcot had a disorder that made her appear pregnant, and this fueled her followers, who numbered about 100,000 by 1814, mainly in the London area. Southcot died not long after this. Her official date of death was given as 27th of December 1814, but it's likely that she died the previous day, as her followers retained her body for some time, in the belief she would be raised from the dead. They agreed to her burial only after the corpse began to decay. She was buried at the Chapel of Ease at St John's Wood in January 1815. The Southcotian movement, though, did not end with her death in 1814, although her followers had greatly declined in number by the end of that century. In 1844, one Anne Essam left large sums of money for printing, publishing, and propagation of the sacred writings of Joanna Southcot. The will was disputed in 1861 by her niece, on grounds that the writings were blasphemous, and the bequest was contrary to the statutes of Mormon. The Court of Chancery refused to find the writings blasphemous but voided the bequest, acknowledging that it broke the statutes of Mormon. In 1881 there was an enclave of her followers living in the Chatham area, east of London, who were distinguished by their long beards and good manners. Southcot left a sealed wooden casket of prophecies, usually known as Joanna Southcot's box, with instructions to open it only at a time of national crisis, and in the presence of all 24 current bishops of the Church of England, who were to spend a fixed period beforehand studying her prophecies. Attempts were made to persuade the episcopate to open it in the Crimean War, and again in the First World War. In 1927, the psychic researcher Harry Price claimed to have come into possession of the box, and arranged to have it opened in the presence of one reluctant prelate, the suffragan Bishop of Grantham. It was found to contain only a few oddments and unimportant papers, among them a lottery ticket and a horse pistol. Price's claims to have had the true box were disputed by historians and by Southcot followers. Southcotians who denied the authenticity of the box that was opened in 1927 continued to press for the true box to be opened. A campaign on billboards and in national newspapers such as the Sunday Express was run in the 1960s and 70s by a prominent group of Southcotians, the Panacea Society in Bedford, to try to persuade the 24 bishops to have the box opened, claiming war, disease, crime and banditry, distress of nations and perplexity will increase until the bishops open Joanna Southcot's box. The society claims to hold this true box at a secret location for safekeeping, with its whereabouts to be disclosed only when a bishop's meeting has been arranged. The box shown in the Panacea Museum at Bedford is understood to be a meticulous replica for display purposes. Southcot prophesied that the day of judgment would come in the year 2004, and her followers stated that if the contents of the box had not been studied beforehand, the world would have had to meet it unprepared. Her religious teachings are still practiced today by two groups, the Christian Israelite Church and the House of David. Well, there we go. The real question is, where is the real box? Where is it? Now, we're going to finish with this one. I am cutting this video slightly shorter because, I don't know if you can hear, but my stomach is making weird noises and it actually has me in pieces. I think I need to go to bed, basically. But this is my favourite of the ones I sourced. How the Yorkshire witch scammed 1806 leads with apocalyptic chicken eggs and simple chemistry. History is full of people claiming to possess magical powers who then get exposed as liars. However, some cases are more bizarre than others. The story of the Yorkshire witch is one of these. A story involving murder, deceit, and prophetic eggs. And no, this isn't the kind of egg fiasco that landed Goop with a hefty fine for telling tales. This tale dates back to the 1800s, in the city of Leeds in West Yorkshire, England. Mary Bateman, maiden name Mary Harker, was born in the village of Assenby, North Yorkshire in 1768. Her father was a farmer and Mary apparently received a good quality education for someone of her class, being able to read and write proficiently. However, after living in York for a year, Mary had to flee to Leeds after being caught red-handed committing robbery. According to a biography of Bateman, she displayed what may have been a pathological need to steal. She was moreover none too discreet in the manner of her robberies. She was caught in the act multiple times, perhaps bribing her victims to avoid facing the legal consequences of her actions. Alongside her propensity for stealing, Mary Bateman also had a more spiritual side hustle as a wise woman, telling fortunes and supposedly removing harmful spells placed upon her clients. Like many people at the time, Bateman kept chickens to keep her supplied with fresh eggs. However, in 1806 she claimed that one of her hens was laying eggs magically inscribed with a message, "Christ is coming." Presumably, I see, so the message said Christ is coming, but Christ is spelled C-R-I-S-D. Presumably the message was meant to say Christ is coming with an H, but spell check didn't exist in 1806, and who has time to proofread when the Messiah is due to return any minute? This revelation had exactly the reaction Bateman wanted. Huge numbers of people lined up, paying each a penny to view the mystical eggs and the magical chicken laying them. Those who witnessed this were whipped into a frenzy, convinced that the apocalypse was upon them. Mary also began selling seals, assuring admission into heaven after the chicken foretold apocalypse. These seals were just pieces of paper with the letters JC on them. However, not everyone believed the story of the magical apocalypse eggs. Why ever not? Some skeptics got up early in the morning, hiding out near Mary Bateman's house to observe her. A passage in the book Extraordinary Popular Delusions and the Madness of Crowds explains what they found. It says, some gentleman hearing of the matter went one fine morning and caught the poor hen in the act of laying one of her miraculous eggs. They soon ascertained beyond doubt that the egg had been inscribed with some corrosive ink and cruelly forced up again into the bird's body. At this explanation those who had prayed now laughed, and the world wagged as merrily as of yore. It turned out that this corrosive ink was concentrated vinegar. Vinegar is a solution of acetic acid, usually containing between 4 to 8% acetic acid. Eggshells are mostly made up of calcium carbonate, also a common ingredient in antacids. Limestone is also mostly made up of calcium carbonate and is known to be dissolved by acid rain. Therefore, when the vinegar was painted onto the eggs, the acetic acid reacted with the calcium carbonate in a chemical reaction that ends up producing carbon dioxide, water, and calcium acetate, dissolving the shell and forming the ominous message while not damaging the inner membranes of the eggs. Mary Bateman reapplied the vinegar multiple times to ensure the message was sufficiently burned in before ramming them back up the poor bird's cloaca, so it seemed that the inscription happened while the egg was still inside the chicken. After her scam was exposed, Bateman sold the bird, which went on to be named the Prophet Hen of Leeds, to a neighbour, and it stopped laying the inscribed eggs. Unfortunately, this wasn't the end of Mary Bateman's scamming career. A woman named Rebecca Perico consulted Mary about a pain in her breast, which Bateman said was the result of an evil wish. As part of her magical and pricey cure, Bateman fed both Rebecca and her husband William poisoned pudding. Rebecca ended up dying, and Mary Bateman was hung at noon on March 20th, 1809, for murder and fraud. Bateman's body ended up being put on display at Leeds General Infirmary, with people paying to see her and even buying cured cuts of her skin to use as charms. That's a great stocking filler, isn't it? Her body was also put on display at the Thackeray Medical Museum in Leeds until 2015. Mary Bateman, dubbed the Yorkshire Witch after her magical escapades, certainly never chickened out of making a quick buck. That is a good story. Hey, the game's the game. If people are stupid enough to buy a product, then that's on them really, isn't it? At the end of the day. And if people are able to, make some money out of people being stupid enough to believe the world is ending, then hey, all power to you, all power to you. But yeah guys, that was 4 conspiracy theories about the end of the world. I really hope you did enjoy it. To be fair, I said I've cut the video short. I realised I've only didn't do one, and that was last for a reason. It was kind of a boring one, so we whispered for an appropriate amount of time. Next week, next Monday, what's the video? I think it might be a fact video, and then a scary video, and then it should be the Q&A. So yeah, hopefully you enjoyed this video. If you did, and you're able to, then please do give this video a like, and subscribe if you're new. But until the next video, everybody,